Welcome to the Uppers podcast. We're in studio with Paul Sale. Morning, Paul.
How's it, Nat? Excited to be here with you.
Great to be here together.
Cool.
Hopefully we'll keep you all entertained with some interesting property-related discussions. And in particular today, just really unpacking how in the southern suburbs, buying a home is not always just a property decision. It's often an education decision.
Thanks, Nat. Looking forward to getting stuck in today. So we're going to be discussing the school gate economy, how much the school fence actually adds value to your property. We're going to look at the semigration, from KZN, Joburg to Cape Town, and then the next-gen security features on your home, and how does that add value to your property.
How was your time in the traffic this morning?
Sure, Nat. Over the years, I can see, it's been, 10 years in the traffic, and I can notice every year it's getting worse and worse. Obviously, we stay in Takai, my boys are at SACS, and it's real. The traffic's real. If we don't leave by a certain time, we can sit for sometimes half an hour, 45 minutes to get to school.
Does anyone eat breakfast in the car?
All the time.
We have the same.
And now the boys are getting older, so they are sleeping a little up. But when they were in junior school, it was easy. They were up and going. Now it's dragging their feet, as you know. So it definitely does have an impact. The traffic does have an impact. And also just like from after school, sometimes, you got two different schedules. One finishes at this time, the other finishes at that time. Sometimes it's an hour and a half or an hour's difference.
And extramurals.
Yeah.
Or even now we've had the cultural inter-house singing that's been on at the boys' school. Yeah. And it's evening sessions as well. But we've had a complete turnaround because our eldest is now driving, taking the younger brother to school with him.
You're easier now, huh?
Yeah. So now it doesn't feel like Constantia's as far from Bishop's as it was before.
I'm still feeling very far. And also sometimes, they got early morning schedules.
What we're finding, our buyers find hugely, and it does seem more and more now that they buy a school before they buy a house.
Of course.
These kids are often on long waiting lists if they've moved down from Gauteng and KZN, or even if they've moved within the southern suburbs. And so by the time they get them into a school, they want to make sure that they're close and they're not spending huge amounts of time. They'll pay a premium to be close.
Yeah, and as you know, probably 90% of our buyers looking in the southern suburbs are generally young families or families wanting to have kids and are just planning their future. And they are looking to buy in and around those school zones purely because of convenience and also just lovely areas.
So I think that those homes often command a premium for pricing, but certainly move much quicker.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if they're close to the catchment areas of their schools, certainly SACS, Rondebosch, Wynberg, Rustenburg, you have to live within the catchment.
Of course.
But even if it's not a catchment-related issue, you want to be 5 to 10 Ks.
Of course.
From the school gate.
Absolutely. And as we discussed now, the traffic is real. Obviously, with all the people coming in, and we'll discuss that later in the program, there's a lot more people coming into Cape Town, and therefore the infrastructure isn't growing. So the roads are still the same, but there's a lot more cars on the road.
Traffic is
just, even at generally your 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock rush hour was traffic, but now it's starting 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock.
I also think it's quite unique in the southern suburbs, Paul, that we have such a high concentration of good quality schools.
Yeah.
If we look at what is on our doorstep in the southern suburbs, and certainly from where I'm hyper-focused in Constantia, Bishopscourt and Upper Claremont, and for you in Kenilworth Upper, we've got SACS for the boys' schools. We've got Rondebosch, we've got Wynberg, we've got Bishops, we've got Westerford, which is a co-ed school, Springfield, Herschel, Rustenburg, who am I missing there? But you've got an enormous amount of schools and a huge range for the buyers and homeowners to choose from.
And top schools in the country, and in fact the world. What those schools offer. Both our boys have been to those schools, it's insane what they offer and what the education, the culture, the environment that the kids get in those schools. And it's literally, as you said, within a 5 to 10 kilometer radius of one another. And we've been there, the SACS, Wynberg, the Bishopscourt derbies. I mean, they're incredible. And it just, from dating back to however long they've been going, and it's great to see, and it's lovely to be part of. And hence why so many people and young families want to move into the area.
Look, the flip side is when the schools go on holiday, there's no traffic.
Yeah, I mean, that's great.
You can get to work in a flash.
You can time it. It normally takes you 5 minutes to get there. Eh? And I mean, it's incredible. But we're very lucky.
I think also on the back end of that is from the school side is looking at the semigration.
Yes.
And it was such a hot topic post-COVID.
Yeah.
Really a mass exodus of people moving from the interior, Gauteng, coast up in KZN, down to Cape Town in any form or fashion. It didn't really matter who, what, when, where, or how they were coming. And I'm not sure what you're finding with your buyers, but certainly I don't think it's that same exodus anymore. It's very much a refined and molded semigration now. Still predominantly Gauteng based, what I'm seeing.
Of course.
But it is definitely still school driven.
Yes.
And that the remote working allows for people to be able to be based in Cape Town. Some are still commuting, here for lifestyle.
Yeah.
What are the main things about Cape Town that you feel are driving people? Because it still seems to be the real hotspot for Cape Town.
So I'm very similar. I'm also finding with a lot of my buyers, especially Gauteng and KZN buyers, it is lifestyle that's driving them to come to Cape Town. Also, just the way Cape Town is run.
The service delivery.
Service delivery is really high and forefront in terms of the way things are done and run here compared to the rest of the country. So I think that's driving a lot of people. I feel that it's also just leveled off a bit. I think the reality of a lot of people thinking and wanting to come, trying to sell where they do, to buy here, there is quite a disconnect in property values.
The pricing.
Pricing is there's a big disconnect. So the reality is that it has eased off a little, purely because of the logistical move and pricing. And we just mentioned schools, but a lot of the schools are full now at the moment. They can only take a certain amount of boys or girls or pupils. Generally, I'm finding that lifestyle is the main contributor to the movement.
I've also, with some of the clients, had that sense of perceived safety.
Yeah.
And we'll discuss that later in the episode regarding, AI and community initiatives to keep neighborhoods safe.
Yeah.
But that does seem to be a draw card. And some of our Gauteng buyers are still very much of the idea that you need your really high walls and 8-strand electric fencing, and you need to be in a gated estate.
Yeah.
And I think that's not the case here. There is absolute, in my opinion, huge safety in freestanding homes. There are different lifestyle opportunities in gated estates, which we will look at.
Yeah. Definitely the safety aspects. I mean, Cape Town is, and then we'll dive into some security stats later, but that is definitely a driving force. And we definitely in the southern suburbs, the areas we work in, there's a good sense of security. I don't feel any of my clients when I go meet with them that they're selling because of security reasons. And that's over the last 5-10 years that the security has really, really improved in the areas.
And we've had also buyers that have been looking for 3 to 4 years.
Absolutely.
Who, when they first moved from Gauteng or KwaZulu-Natal, weren't quite sure where they wanted to settle.
Yeah.
And so they moved into the rental space.
Yes.
So there were still Gauteng buyers on the back end of that semigration post-COVID,
yes,
who only now comfortable, the kids at school, they've got to know the neighborhoods, and they're really happy to then make the investment, or have now been able to sell their property in Gauteng.
So that it is a process. And but definitely there's still a movement from our country to Cape Town. We're also seeing quite a bit of obviously foreign buyers, and you can also chat about that. But I'm also seeing a lot more foreign buyers buying in the southern suburbs. Generally, they were pretty much marked to Atlantic Seaboard, but they're coming in and enjoying the lifestyle here, the great shops, the security we just chatted about. So
Just a bit more space.
A lot more space, more value. Yeah,
I think that the semigration part of the Atlantic Seaboard, southern suburbs, is that where the foreign buyers have continued to buy up in the Atlantic Seaboard, like you said, have moved now into the southern suburbs.
Yes.
But as they've bought up record prices in the Atlantic Seaboard, South Africans who've been on the Atlantic Seaboard have then chosen to pocket a bit of the proceeds of the sale and move to the southern suburbs so that they've got more space, closer to the schools again.
Absolutely.
Maybe their families are old enough to actually be closer to these southern suburb schools, not wanting to commute around the mountain. So all of these, even though they're foreign buyers, has again driven a semigration even just from the Atlantic Seaboard round the corner to.
And I did mention it before, but a lot of the buyers that we deal with are young up-and-coming professionals or young families who have an apartment or a flat in Sea Point or Atlantic Seaboard and just wanting more space, planning on having kids and wanting to be around their schools. So that's also what's driving a lot of the movement into the southern suburbs at the moment.
Okay, and what we're seeing as a result of that is this constant strive for people to be living in and around Cape Town and the southern suburbs.
Absolutely.
Is we just don't have enough property to sell them.
No.
So the number of high quality homes is far lower than the number of buyers that are looking for it, which is where our own sellers get to leverage their own pricing because of the supply issue that we're finding and this increased demand. It just doesn't seem to be settling.
No.
There is no slowing down of the demand for properties.
No, and that's the thing. We are seeing. I mean, we're on the coal front every day when you've got properties and you list a property and there's buyers, 100 calls or calls to view the property. So the demand is still very much outsupplying the supply, definitely.
And I think the magic then there is when we know our buyers as well as we do in our uppers team,
Absolutely.
is that so many of our deals are concluded off market. Over 80% this year
Absolutely.
have been sold without ever going to the market.
That's just an indication of the buyer demand. We don't even have to go to market, and we list a property, send it, and as you said, sells off market.
But it is also a symptom of how well we know our buyers.
Absolutely.
And how well we mine that buyer database.
Exactly, and push the property out, definitely.
I think the work we've done with 68 Media as well, for them to be able to bring in the amount of marketing they do. So, marketing will obviously get the property out there, but our negotiation skills are going to make sure that we get the right price for our clients. So we can't separate marketing from negotiation, from referral networks and knowing our buyers as well as we do and the like and trust we have with our clients. Yes. But to have those negotiation skills on the back end of a really slick marketing team,
of course,
in the uppers is essential.
And you just touched on the next point about choosing the right agent. Do you go with an agent who's got the name, got this, got that, but ultimately you need to like and trust that agent. The agent needs to have a good market share in his or her specific area, have a good team around them. It's a very good point that you touched on there about how the agent can get you the best possible price.
I've seen, certainly in our industry, several agents who've been area specialists, and I'm a big fan. I think that if you're wanting to sell your house, to always have an agent who hyper-focuses in a particular area in the southern suburbs. And there has been a trend for agents who've been area specialists to broaden that as stocks tightened in their own worry about stock.
Cast out the net,
which I think is a mistake. I think to change your hyper-focus, even at a time when the stock tightening market takes your eye off the ball.
Of course. I totally agree with you there. You want an agent who knows exactly everything in that area. What's sold on highest price, what's on the market, and that is, I believe, how the agent can get you the best possible price.
Well, and also we know the buyers looking in those niche pockets.
Yeah.
So by the time we're talking to our sellers in their living room, we've already in our mind pictured
5 buyers.
5 buyers
Exactly.
who's going to be there in the next 10 minutes.
That's how it is,
Yeah.
Also, you don't, I think gone are the days where an agent lists a property on the portals and expects buyers to phone them.
Yes, let the portals work for you.
Well, exactly.
It certainly seems to be we're getting our results with properties that are sold off market within days of listing, often multiple offers.
Of course.
And then a bidding war between the buyers. And at that point, they're pushing the price up, because the risk is that the sellers are pitching prices well above fair market value.
Yes.
And conversely, the result is that they actually usually conclude a sale much away from that listing price. Whereas if we are able to guide them as to fair market value,
Exactly.
at that point, the bidding war between the buyers actually pushes up that final price.
And then you do want a good agent who can facilitate that and control that bidding process and get the best possible outcome.
And that's where the negotiation skills are key in the agent that you have.
There you go. So it's a combination, and I think at Seeff Uppers we definitely do that well.
Just what I find with my sellers certainly is, we're thinking about selling. Should we sell now? Are you getting questions like that?
Yes and no. I think, obviously there's always sellers thinking about selling, times of their, moving on, downscaling, upscaling. So there's always a question from the sellers. What I'm finding is that they are asking the serious question about selling, obviously wanting to see what the property is worth and exploring the process. Excuse me. But, the issue is that they don't have anywhere to go, So, and what I do tell them is that, yes, we are selling a lot of properties off market. So if there's never a right time, the time is right when you feel is right.
But now, exactly. As far as the sellers hold all the cards.
Absolutely.
As far as pricing goes. So if you were ever trying to maximize the return on your primary asset, not for everybody, the primary residence is their key, principal asset. But certainly at that point, with the demand being so high and the supply being so constrained, if you were ever thinking about selling, this would be the
perfect time.
And not to worry about not finding something. Because of the off-market trend.
That's what I mentioned, yeah. So there's, a lot of the sellers will look online and see there's very little online. So, and automatically say, listen, okay, well, they can't go anywhere and there's nowhere to go. But coming back to the agent, with a strong agent in the area who's got good market share, they would normally have a lot of properties off-market where a lot of sellers don't want to go online. So there is properties out there.
And the previous client that you and I met with, we were able to guide them as far as transfer dates.
Yes,
you can delay
absolutely.
the transfer date.
There's always ways to work around it.
Or look at occupational rental.
There you go. So I think the time is right when you make it right, and at the moment, it's a very good time to be selling.
Yes, maximizing the return.
Maximizing the demand, what Cape Town has to offer. But yeah, so it is a good time. Absolutely. And then also from your clients too, Nat?
Yes, exactly the same. So the clients that are looking at whether or not they sell now or wait is the concerns that you and I have discussed already. But as long as the home is well prepared.
Yes.
And I do think there's a lot to be said about just making sure you care for the basic maintenance of your home.
Absolutely.
So if it's a well-prepared home, bring it to market.
Yeah.
The concern is now we're sitting in June, we're in our colder time of the year. Should we bring it to market in winter?
Yeah.
A well-prepared home in a stock-tightened market is going to sell through all seasons. It really doesn't make a difference whether it's summer or winter.
I totally agree.
But I do feel like I've said, make sure that your maintenance is up to date, that your home is well cared for.
No, I agree. Because traditionally, the the good selling months were summer. But I'm finding now, any well-priced, well-maintained property throughout the year is going to sell. Yeah.
In the school catchments, those sellers are holding all the cards at the moment.
Absolutely.
It's much to our buyers' absolute shock and horror.
Yeah.
And they are spending beyond what they had imagined spending before.
Absolutely.
And, certainly through the 2022, 2023 markets, we were seeing that 5 to 8% year-on-year increase.
Yeah.
And over the last couple of years, something between 16 and 20%.
Well, we've touched on it before. You close proximity to the schools, which adds a lot of convenience, less traffic, and security is good. And let's go into that security. I know that you've done a lot of work with the Upper Claremont Security Association.
Yeah.
We do sponsor it. And obviously we see a little bit of the stats from year to year, and it's just incredible how over, 5-10 years that they've been going, how the stats have decreased year on year on year.
The crime statistics.
It's unbelievable. And that's what's also driving force in the southern suburbs.
So those neighborhood initiatives or community initiatives that you've touched on, like the Upper Claremont Security Association, the same in Constantia with Constantia Neighborhood Watch, Bishopscourt Neighborhood Watch.
And Kenmar, it's again Kenilworth.
Absolutely. So when the buyers that I've been dealing with, and certainly, you and my collaboration in Upper Claremont, it's never just a home on its own. Like we've spoken about the schools, the actual community or neighborhood within where that house is based is essential for the buyer.
Absolutely.
And just having a security camera is one barrier. But being part of these community initiatives seems to be, a given now. People just expect to be able to have WhatsApp groups where people communicate with each other. And there are these real champions like SACS, Jane Chamberlain at UCSA, who has taken the bull by the horns there. Everybody in Upper Claremont and in Upper Kenilworth knows her.
Of course.
And puts a lot of time and energy in her collaboration with their ward councillors, same as Constantia Watch and Bishopscourt.
Yeah.
So we've got real champions, Dave Baker at Bishopscourt, the same, and the crew in Constantia.
You're right. I'm having a transfer in a couple of weeks, and the buyers are already asking questions. Can you put us onto the security group? Who's running the cameras? So those are real questions from the buyers, and we can answer that. And it's there. It's proven that it's working, and it's in the area, and it's just incredible to see it.
The AGMs that we've attended have helped us really get a handle on what AI they've been using. And at their disposal, the license plate recognition, the LPR cameras, which are able to pick up who's coming in and out of the areas.
Straight to the SAPs. It's incredible.
And their collaboration with SAPs is very powerful, as well as pedestrian recognition, pedestrian activation cameras, which does help them. And then they're able to tap into everyone else's cameras through Wi-Fi. So they can actually ask somebody if they've got a camera in the street, whether they can link into those for crime prevention. Absolutely. So that has been a huge help, that AI on top of the community initiatives. And we proudly are involved with those.
Very proud.
And certainly in UCSA, so anybody in the hen and chicken pocket of Upper Claremont, Seeff is still offering to cover their first 3 months membership.
We do the same thing in Kenmar. Which we've seen quite a bit of a good uptake, which is a great initiative. And I feel very proud to be part of it.
And our sponsorship of Seeff.
And Seeff, yes.
He's a beautiful Malinois, Belgian Malinois.
He's growing up nicely now, and sure.
So I see him often out in the green belts and the trails, even in Constantia Village. He's out on patrol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Back on the beat there, I'll see.
A little bit more friendly than Casey. the other dog. So I think
it's exciting. All those initiatives are really exciting, and very proud to be part of. And
then this is a perfect recipe for why you'd want to live in the uppers areas of the southern suburbs. Yeah. You've got premium schools.
Absolutely.
You've got security initiatives and neighborhood initiatives that keep you safe.
Yeah.
And we know that semigration has continued to push the buyer demand, which that as the seller, you are sitting on a gold mine at the moment.
Oh, absolutely.
And hopefully that's where we're able to bring in the advice that they need on, have you chosen the right agent? Do you have the right agent?
Yeah.
And, perhaps to understand the value. Not everybody, they might presume that their prices have gone up, but have they actually looked into what the value of their home is at the moment?
Absolutely. And that's why working with an established agent in the area can only do good for your property and to protect that price. Absolutely.
And I think that we really have seen some extraordinary price growth over the last couple of years. And if any of our sellers are considering understanding that value at the moment, then we're able to assist them with that.
Absolutely, with absolute pleasure. But yeah, I mean, Cape Town is one of the best cities in the world. And we've just discussed the reasons why. Also the climate. We have great weather here, great mountain trails, great, green belts, beautiful beaches, lovely. Absolutely.
Oh, proudly Capetonian.
Proudly Capetonian. Proudly Southern Suburbs.
Proudly Southern Suburbs. So it's always good to chew the fat with you, Paul.
Always great, Nat. And it's been a great time just chatting and just getting a bit of insight into the world of the Southern Suburbs,
Yeah, and I think we are lucky to be able to be working in such a great
very
pocket.
lucky, very blessed, yeah.
With wonderful clients.
Okay, on to the next one.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Have a super day.
Thanks to you, mate.